G'day everybody, it's Mark here, just running through lesson 3A with you, which is a case study. We're going to do a case study on Christine Foggo. When I say case study, just a bit of an overview of the testing process that I go through once I receive the bloods and I receive the self-testing and whatever. And I mentioned this a little while ago that I thought it might add some value by adding this on to the end of the session, so that in time, as we go through more and more of these lessons, we're going to be more and more introduced to the process, so that when we actually get to the point where we do the process, you'll have a better understanding. Okay, and I mean, up front, you're not going to have a great understanding, but it doesn't matter. This is about repetition. It's about being presented with the stuff, seeing it, going through it, and time again, and you'll start clicking. Okay, so this is what we're going to do today. It's just a fairly brief presentation, and yeah, we'll just get an idea of that I use. Okay, so case study number one. This is the first case study we're doing, and we're going to aim to do. I'm going to aim to do at least one every lesson until we get to the point where we actually are working through the case studies and a lot more thorough, because we're actually doing the testing. We're working through the numbers and stuff like that. We're a little bit away from doing that yet, but that's okay. The time will come, and when it comes, you're going to be familiar with the process. You're going to be familiar with what I do and some of the thinking. Okay, discussion, of course, we're not going to have a discussion, but because this is going to be taped, of course, I'm going to be traveling, so any questions, Q&As, and just in the post, and leave it in the Facebook post, and we can do it via there. And then once I get to the UK and we'll get organised, we'll organise some Q&A sessions, maybe just on their own, so we can catch up with. So Christine Foggo is who we're looking at. 9 out of 10 well-being score, which is probably asked the question why she got tested. She might, just a few things going on there. Crohn's, overactive thyroid and whatnot, a bit of adrenal stuff on there, okay? So what I'm looking at, when I do this testing, the first thing I'm really looking at is the bloods. Now, the bloods really are just there. I do the bloods, I've mentioned this before, I can do this testing without the blood. I don't need to do the blood, and actually, as it is, I'm going to be coming out with a non-blood testing service, which is going to be a little bit cheaper than what I'm doing right now, but the turnaround can be in a matter of hours, because we don't need to do the bloods. It just needs to do the testing, because at the end of the day, the bloods are fascinating, and they can really offer up some really good clues as to what's going on. But when it comes down to the numbers and the protocols, it's still going to be the same, because the protocols are based on what I'm seeing in the numbers. Okay, whereas the bloods, like I said, it's going to confirm that, just back up the numbers and making sure that I'm not seeing anything in the bloods that I'm not seeing in the numbers, if you like. Okay, so top left is an example of a good dry blood sample, and any other variations are things that they can tell me different things depending on where they are in the sample and whatnot. The dark webbing, you can see the dark webbing in the top left hand side. That's a protein. It's called fibrin. So when we have that really good webbing, we know we've got some really good protein going on. Okay. And as you can see, I'm going to skip through to the next picture in a minute, but these other pictures here, we haven't got a really good lot of webbing. So very early on, straight up, we know that we're going to be struggling for protein. So we've got some digestive issues to start with, there's no question. Okay, because we don't have the way that blood's coagulated. The other things you can see on these pictures of interest, the bottom right hand side, number 5, you can see the darker area. Number 4, you can see a little bit of darker area just about above the 4. It's a bit hard to tell. And there's a couple of patches on the next slide, which I'll show you in a second. But when I see this is usually a sign, wherever this appears, especially look at number 5, this raised red area, it's usually a sign of cardiovascular stress, okay? So as soon as I see that, cardiovascular stress, I think, well, where does that come from? Where's the cardiovascular stress coming from? Is this person going to have a heart attack? Has she got cardiovascular issues and whatnot? Well, no, she doesn't. The cardiovascular issue, when I see it like this, more often than not, it's just due to the heart working too hard, because the blood's too thick, and it's usually down to high ammonias, okay? And usually down to high ammonia, down to poor protein digestion, okay? So we pick up some poor protein digestion, we've already picked that up. Well, if we have poor protein digestion, we can run into problems with ammonias, because the protein's left in the blood for a few days and go through all these changes, and we produce this ammonia. And ammonia is very toxic. It's very thick, so it thickens the blood. It's very alkaline. Parasites love it because parasites actually pee ammonia. It's the environment they like. But more than anything, it's about the extra workload it puts on your heart. So a lot of chronic fatigue, a lot of fatigue issues I see. I'm coming through and I'm seeing a lot of these red marks, these cardiovascular stress markers coming up. And if I was to do do a reagents test maybe in the clinic, I could prove that 100%. But so that's what I see. And these little brown dark areas can come up anywhere, okay, on the sample. Another interest, if you look at number 1, it's very hard to tell, but there are faint lines coming out from the center. If you go around to the right, you can see these white lines, very faint. You can see it on 2 as well. Okay, now when we see this, we're looking at long-term digestive issues due to mineral issues. Okay, so the body's been struggling a little bit to maintain homeostasis in the blood level. It's been draining, it's been pulling minerals probably from the bones a little bit to be able to just maintain some homeostasis. Because if you look at number 1, 4, and 5, you can also see all these little white patches. They're a little bit yellow, but they're really white. Okay, this is a sign of cells that are just breaking down just a little bit more than they're building up. Okay, so we tend to be a little bit more breakdown than anything else. Okay, so the white stuff is what we call polymerized protein puddles. Okay, and if they're all over the place like they are on these samples, not 4 isn't too systemic, but number 5 is. It's just a general sign that there's this on a systemic level. There's some stress, and of course there is, but it just backs that up and highlights that there may be some cardiovascular stuff. Okay, number 2. This is another example of if you can look at the edge of the sample, you can see it's very bitty. There's no firm edge, and this is usually a sign that the blood cells aren't sticking together very well. So it's a good sign that the vitamin C is probably just a little bit low. We're not getting vitamin C. All right, maybe we're taking it, but we're not getting it. So that's a pretty good sign, because when we take the samples, the blood cells sort of stream across the glass, and they really should hold together, nice and firm, stick, because vitamin C is the glue that holds our body together. Okay, so that's coming through quite strong there. And excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink. Number 3. If you look at number 3, you can see this little blob, this little end thing here. Now, this isn't always the case, and I can't remember if I verified this with Christine, but usually that's a neck, back, shoulder, structural stress. Any sort of pointy bits comes out like that, okay, on number 3. That's usually, I get this 98% of the time, we'll get that right. There is something going on with the neck, back, and shoulders there, okay? Which is crazy when you think about it. How on earth is this stuff reflected in the blood? Well, everything's reflected in the blood. And we just got to be able to understand and interpret it. That's the trick, and this is what we're doing with this testing. We are interpreting it, but the body shows you. Body will show you everything. Okay, it's just a matter of being able to see it. I guess the other thing too, when we look at these blood samples. I forgot what I was going to say. Then hang on, just pause it. Okay, I forgot what I was going to say then, no big deal. Okay, let's have a look at the next picture down. You can see another raised area here in the number 6. You can see that line in the raised area. Number 8, you can see a raised area, okay? Number 8 is not a very good sample, but there's still, you can see just a little bit of a blip there, just to the left and up a bit from the 8. More confirmation that there's some, it's the cardiovascular stress. Number 9, it's very hard to see, but there's a little white spot. That's a liver spot, a liver stress. Okay, liver spot, clear as day. Number 7, this is where I zoomed in one of these samples, because one of the things I need to look at when I'm looking at these white patches, these polymerized protein puddles, is to see if there's any sialic acid beads in the puddles, because if there is, it's just a sign that there's more serious tissue acidosis, if you like, going on. Okay, and I think I zoomed in there. I might have seen one or two. It's no big deal, but and the white patches aren't that big. But once I start, looking at these and seeing that tells me, whoa, there may be an environment that's conducive to things happening that we don't want to happen. And we sort of know that anyway, but it's just, once again, it's a confirmation. We're gonna clear it up with the protocol anyway, but this is just a confirmation, and I guess a gift, especially if we start to see things like sialic acid beads and stuff like that, because we're looking into the future of our health here. Okay. Okay, just bear with me. I'm just going to pause 1 second. Okay, so that's the blood. So I guess there's not a lot came through. As we go through more and more bloods, you'll see more and more stuff come through. Sometimes with the bloods, we don't get anything come through, or very little. Sometimes in the body, stuff is going on, but it's not expressed in the blood. Okay, so because the body's dealing with it. This is how I look at it. Okay, so once we see it in the blood, the body says it's like the body saying, "Hey, I'm struggling. I'm not able to manage this anymore," and therefore it's being reflected. I'm showing you. Okay. So it doesn't, just because it's not in there, it doesn't mean you don't have it. Or just because we don't see parasites, it doesn't mean you don't have the parasites, because they don't always come through. Okay. So this is why with bloods, bloods are a little bit subjective, or they can be. But they can be damn powerful too sometimes as well. Okay, this is why I don't just do the bloods on their own. All right, so that's the bloods. What I'm going to do now, we're going to have a look at the imbalance guide. Now, once we get into doing the testing, everyone will get a spreadsheet, and as you put in the questionnaire numbers and whatnot, you'll build this profile on a page like this. I mean, it might change a bit down the track because it's fairly basic, but it sort of does the job. And really, am I that concerned right now with numbers? Or I'm not. When I'm looking at this, I'm looking at patterns more than anything else. Okay, every red box I'm looking at here is a marker that's out of whack. Okay, but just because we have a heap of markers in one area doesn't mean it's a concern. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an imbalance. It all depends on what else is going on, and I'll talk you through that process. But this is laid out on a hierarchy from number 1 to number 5. You can see that. Control mechanism number 1, electrolyte status. That's the most important mechanism that we're looking at. Okay. We talked about that in the lesson I've just done. I just previously did on electrolyte status. So this is the first one. Do we have the ability to move energy around the body in the first place? Okay, and then we look at number 2, and we're going to go through in more detail on it. This is a circadian rhythm. This is cell membranes. This is all about anabolic, catabolic. Do we have what's going on there? Okay, is there strong enough indications there to pick an imbalance? Okay. Then we come down to number 3, which is energy production. This is the carb burning or fat burning, and very few people, I find very few people are carb burners. Most people tend to be slow oxidizers and fat burners. Okay. Now, although Christine's only come up with 3 markers in a fat burner, the fact that the breath rate is so low will dictate, regardless, that that's an imbalance and it needs to be worked on. Okay, now these first 3, they're the main ones. They're the main systems that I look at. Okay, the number 4 and number 5 are really the real tail of the biological dog, if you like. We've talked about that before. The autonomic nervous system and the pHs are so under the control of everything else that if we've got cell membrane issues and we have some electrolyte issues, well then things are not going to be going to be a little bit out. Okay, so the first 3 boxes are the most important. The nervous system is something that, look, unless it's a really serious issue, we leave that alone. It'll fix itself. Okay, and then we have digestion. Okay, now digestion is a big one, and you can see with Christine's process there. Look. The red boxes, that says it all. Everything gets back to digestion. Burping and bloating, passing gas. I mean, burping and bloating, not enough hydrochloric acid. Passing gas, not enough bile. Okay, A light coloured stool, not enough bile, okay? The digestion is down. We know that. We have cell membrane issues and we have electrolyte issues. Well, the electrolyte issues aren't that bad, actually, I should say, but it's more the catabolic and the slow oxidizer that's a real issue here, I guess. And although it stems from digestive issues, we're not necessarily able to just push everything back to where they should be just by fixing digestion. But it all gets back to digestion. Okay, you can see it's plain as day on this picture. Okay, so what have I picked here as an imbalance? Now, although the blood pressures are a little bit low, if you did notice that I did say that the resting to standing pulse difference of greater than 12 is a marker that I'm really looking at. Sometimes I would pick this as an imbalance, okay, with these numbers, but with everything else going on, I think it's more to do with we've got to fix up this catabolic side of things more than anything else. So I haven't picked it as an imbalance as such, but we still address it through digestion anyway. It doesn't matter, but we're not targeting specifically with electrolyte deficiency supplements, if you like. Okay, I don't see it being that much of a serious issue there. Okay, so we're fine. Now we can skip to the next most important session, which is number 2, which is the circadian rhythm. Okay, and we're coming up quite strong there with catabolic. Okay, now catabolic and parasympathetics often go together. Okay, and also with bile issues as well. So when I see a catabolic, I'm going to look at parasympathetic. Quite often it will be electrolyte deficiency. Okay, and also it will be mean we're struggling with bile, with gallbladder. It's a pattern I see all the time. Okay, parasympathetic, catabolic, and when we see that, it just gives us a little bit more confirmation, a little bit more confidence that we're on the right track. Okay, we talked about the fat burning, slow burning. Look, a breath rate of 10, it doesn't matter what else comes up. If you're breathing a low breath rate, your body isn't oxygenating as much as it should be, and it's just a no-brainer. Okay, so digestive insufficiency sits above everything, of course. But what about these systems above it? What have we, with the catabolic imbalance, how can we fix that? We can do all we can with digestion, but we're not going to fix up necessarily the catabolic until we start fixing up. Well, we're going to start fixing up the digestion, but what's catabolic? What's catabolic? It's about cell membranes. What are cell membranes about? About lipids. What are lipids about? Gallbladder. What's gallbladder about? Bile. What do we have just now in the digestive issues here? Passing gas, bile issues. Okay, so it makes sense. If we're going to have bile issues, we're going to have lipid issues. If we're going to have lipid issues, we're going to have cell membrane issues. If we're going to have cell membrane issues, we've got all sorts of problems. Okay, it's just one of these patterns that will come up. Okay, and you'll start looking for them. You start doing some, and you go like, I know what's going to happen. Oh, I know what's coming up here, and you just nail it. Okay, nothing is going to happen while you have these cell membrane issues. It is just not going to happen. Okay, catabolic's all about breaking down. And if we remember, we go back to those bloods. I was talking about some of those polymerized protein puddles that were in the blood samples, which were a sign of just a bit of degeneration, a bit of breakdown. That's catabolic. If it was anabolic, we wouldn't see any of that because there's not enough breakdown. The anabolic is not breaking down enough. It's not doing enough work. Okay, so once again, that sort of backs up. And the digestion, we're not seeing fibrin, good fibrin levels in the bloods. So we know digestion's going on. So we look at digestion. What is it about digestion? And once again, we go through burping and bloating, HCl, passing gas, gallbladder. You like coloured stool. This is no bile. Okay. When we look at this, we can say all over. We know what's going on. If you fix the bile up, okay, and we start working on the cell membrane to get some digestive help, things are going to start coming good. Okay, it all makes sense. But bile is a big one on this one. Okay, there's a light coloured stools. It's a big one. Without bile, we have no digestion. Okay, so that's an overview of that's the printout, the imbalance guide that I give out when I do my assessments. Okay, and you're going to have all these templates when we go through this. Oh. I'm wondering about this because I was going to go into more detail. I couldn't see the numbers. Okay, well, a little bit closer here. Okay, so 109.79 insomnia, cravings. Look, insomnia and cravings, once we've got cravings, we know there's some mineral issues again, but like I said, this resting to standard didn't trigger this marker here, so I've left it as it is. Okay. One interesting thing, when you come over to the catabolic, you can see a 7.2 urine and a 7.2 saliva pH. When we see pHs so close together like this, that is usually an anabolic marker. Okay, but insomnia, waking easily, soft stools, gag reflex, low blood pressure is not an anabolic thing. So when I see this, the first thing I say is, oh, I wonder if that's consistent. And I may ask for the client to go and do 2 or 3 more readings just to see if that is consistent, because that 7.2, that's telling me nothing's happening. All right, what's coming in is going out, and there's no machinery in action. So it's probably just a pH that's just a bit high for some other reason, something you've eaten or drunk not long before or whatever. Okay, but just because I see those two, they're a good indication. But if I see them, you know, there's loose stools and awake easy and insomnia, that is not an anabolic person. An anabolic person can't stay awake. Okay, and then we come back to this production. We can have a look at this energy production. You can see that 10. Breath rate of 10 when we should be up around about 15 or 16. Sugars a little, not too bad, 84. But I am concerned because of the pHs being quite high, that we do have some issues with some sugars, and we're going to touch on that. I think I mentioned about sugars in the protocol. Okay. You notice too with the energy production, you can see there's a few similar symptoms on either side. Okay, so just you might have a whole red box filled up on one side, but it's not necessarily going to mean it's an imbalance. Okay, like I said, the breath rate trumps this. You cannot be a fast oxidizer and have a slow breath rate like that. It's impossible. And then we come over to the autonomic nervous system. Yeah, I don't work too much on that. Okay, it's just, yeah, it's backed up. It's, you know, you're parasympathetic, you're coming through, and you know, just struggling to, you know, fire things up. Then we come down to here again, breath rate being 10, and the digestion. Okay, burping and bloating, yes, that's lack of hydrochloric acid. We're feeding the bugs, passing gas. We're not getting any bile. Reflux, once again, it's hydrochloric acid. Light-colored stool, once again, this is gallbladder. Diarrhea, this is catabolic. Okay, craving is getting your minerals. Okay, so I'm always going to see a lot of red boxes on the digestive capacity side of things, okay? Because everything gets back to digestion, all right? If you're passing gas, burping and bloating, you got reflux, how on earth are you going to get well? It is not going to happen. It's impossible. Okay, so you can even see just from this assessment, if we were just to start addressing this, the gallbladder and the bile and getting some fats into this person, things are going to start changing and start manifesting the way they should be. Okay. And then we got on to the protocol, and there's the protocol thing is interesting, because when I'm doing a one-off testing, quite often what we'll do is you know, when you're presented with it, it can be a little bit overwhelming, because you go, oh my God, you know, how many caps do I need to take? But remembering I'm putting everything down here that I can think of right now, that if you were to do it and you were to go through this process, I'm pretty confident that things will start working for you. Okay, now you know, typically people won't follow the protocol as they should, and maybe not do all the subsets they should, and things don't work as well as they should. But you know, I have all the confidence in the world by doing this so many times now that I know that I have confidence that if we follow this protocol, and we start from the top down as well, as a priority, if you like, that you know, we will start nailing things. It's not about fixing. This isn't about fixing a problem, tackling a problem, addressing a problem. This is about enabling things to happen. All right? We're not targeting a symptom or a condition. We're just enabling things to do. So where do we start with enabling? We'll start with, let's look at the top, filtered water. If we don't have filtered water, how are we going to have flow? If we don't have flow, how are we going to get nutrition into the cells, nutrition out of the cells, toxins out of the cells and whatnot? Okay, so filtered water right at the top. If you're not doing that, there's no point going any further down the list. Borax, You know, these are standard. Okay, filtered water, borax, and probiotics are standard, which I leave in nearly everybody, regardless. Okay, borax is a big one for people because most people are a little bit sus with the borax, but keep it in there, and it's got to get it through to people that we need borax and we need boron. But they're the three main ones. And then we start looking at, okay, well, what do we see in our numbers? What was going on? Well, we knew we had some cardiovascular stress because of the markers on the dry blood. Okay. Typically, this is also when high ammonius, it's going to cause not only just fatigue, general fatigue, but also quite a bit of brain fog, especially in the mornings and whatnot. So alpha-ketoglutarate, it's an amino acid that will knock that ammonia out of the system within 2 days, and yeah, you can just start feeling better almost immediately if that's an issue. Okay, so let's just go back. Filtered water, borax, probiotics, and alpha-ketoglutarate. What are we doing? We're enabling. We're pulling the stress. We're relieving the stress of the cardiovascular system. We're adding some water. Okay, we're getting some borax in there so we can hold on to some minerals. And you can start to see we're starting to lay the groundwork. What's going to happen when we start reducing ammonia? Who knows? But it's going to be good, because we don't know what's going to manifest, but we know we're enabling. We're just enabling. We'll see what enables. We'll see what manifests. Okay, so that's the alpha-ketoglutarate. The oral life. This is a multi-mineral. It's something I would usually recommend for someone with electrolyte deficiency imbalance, and I think there's a bit of that going on, but I haven't called it an imbalance because it doesn't really matter either way. But Oral Life is a very good. It's an Empirical Labs product used to. It's not just a general. It's designed with this imbalance in mind. Okay. So it's not just general minerals, it's specifically designed for this imbalance. Okay, so we have a look at that and we come down. It's okay if we add some minerals in. The D-limonene, we know we got some liver, we're going to have some liver if we've got gallbladder issues. Okay, if we're not getting bile into the system. Why? What's going on? Things clogging up. If the gallbladder is clogging up, what's going on with the liver? It's clogging up, it must be. All right, so this is logic. All right, the liver's going to be congested. The gallbladder is going to be congested. We're not making any bile. So what we do, we've got to get in there and we've got to try and get that liver cleansed out a bit. All right, and this is what we're doing with D-limonene. I could use also MSM, but this person's a catabolic person and we can't use MSM as a catabolic person. Okay, it's contraindicated. Okay, so we use D-limonene, and D-limonene, I would usually use D-limonene and MSM. Okay, but D-limonene, okay, so we're going to condition the liver, we're going to start thinning the bile, we're going to start making sure that the mechanics are in process and we have the means to do work. Then we come down to liposomal B12, this is B12. This is just something that for Christine was more about giving you a boost of energy. Okay, we got some poor digestion going on. We got a bit of gut stuff going on, no doubt. So B12 is just something. It's really good for people low blood pressure, especially girls, low blood pressure girls struggling a little bit. Get some B12 into them. It can make a big difference. And as I keep repeating, this is about building upon a foundation, and each step of the way we don't know what's going to happen, how far we're going to move forward, but once we start feeling better and we start waking up in the morning and we start having a little bit better thought processes in our mind, we're not negative, we're not feeling crap, well, things are going to improve. Okay, almost like magic. It's almost like we're just going through this process of supplementation just to trick the mind, almost, because if you just do it and things will just start happening. But we have to do it, and we have to lay this groundwork. Banabichrome. This is another. This is a chromium product designed to help with sugars. I didn't see too many. Although Christine's glucometer came through not too high, we've got to be careful. Glucometer glucometer doesn't read all sugars in the system. It's only reading the glucose. So we sometimes, sugars can be still an issue, but it comes through relatively low in the glucometer. So we have to look at some of the other markers, and I did mention some of the other markers give me an indication that there may be some sugar issues, and that was high urine pH more than anything else. Where does a high urine pH come from? Okay, it's got to be calcium. It's the most alkaline substance in our body, and what's going on with that? What's happening there? Okay, so banabichrome. Oh, sorry, the calcium. Calcium will follow sugar into the bloodstream. This is why I have the Banabichrome. Banabichrome will clean the sugar from the bloodstream, and any calcium will go back into the tissues. Okay, so just remember that sugar will always, calcium will always follow the sugar. Okay, so if you have high sugars in your bloodstream, you're going to have high calcium in your bloodstream. You have a high calcium in your bloodstream, your breath rate's going to be low, yeah, things aren't just going to work. Things just aren't going to flow very well. Okay, so that's Banabichrome. That can make a big difference. Then we go into specific. Do we have any imbalances that we need to offer a specific supplement for? And catabolic is one of them. This is one of the best supplements on the planet for catabolic people that are struggling to sleep at night time and struggling to get back into this anabolic mode and whatnot. Okay, so this is an Empirical Labs product designed specifically for that issue. So you can see we've laid the groundwork, we're cleaning the liver out, we're getting bile moving, we're giving ourselves a bit of energy, we're trying to just make sure we've got no sugars, clear the sugars, and now we're going to start tackling the catabolic. Okay, and that's going to help hold those membranes closed a little bit more. Okay, HCl, beet flow, and digestezyme are the three main digestive aid supplements I use. They work brilliantly together. But once again, once we have a means for these things to work, what's the point of pumping all this wonderful stuff into your body if we have no bile movement or we have no stomach acid or anything like that? So, okay, so you can start to see that we don't only, there's no such thing as getting ill in isolation. There's no such thing as getting well in isolation. Everything's connected. Okay, and it's just about building those pieces and putting together. The ascorbic acid, coconut. The ascorbic acid was I did talk about I mentioned yesterday about when we have a pH, urine pH is too high. You can use ascorbic acid or you can use phosphoric acid drops. I would probably more lean towards phosphoric acid drops now as opposed to ascorbic acid, because ascorbic acid can affect the saliva pH a little bit, whereas the phos drops don't, because we want to push urine down, but we don't want to touch saliva. Okay, so that's why I put that on there with Christine, because her pHs were quite high and we needed to get the urine down a bit. Okay, coconut oil, that's just something I whack in there for most people because it's just a standard. I love the stuff. I've seen so many good results from coconut oil. And grounding, that should be at the top. All my most recent protocols now, we have this at the top. Okay, grounding. We talked about grounding. Okay, bare feet connected to earth. If we don't do that and we have blockages, electrical blockages in our body, well, things are going to get a little bit sluggish as well. Okay, so I think I don't know if I've got any more to go on that one. That's the end. So that just gives you a bit of an idea. Okay, now I know that most of that's probably gone straight over your head. It doesn't matter. All right, when I did this training, none of this stuff came together until we got to the end, to the main session of the training. Is the question we're actually going through case studies and we're working through, and you'll start saying, I can remember Mark talking about, I remember that. Yes, that 12 difference. The gallbladder. The light-coloured stools. Okay, it will start coming up. All right, but once it'll start, there'll be more apparent once we start moving into the deeper work down the track. Okay, so this is just to give you an overview, just give you an introduction into what I go through. All right, so please give me some feedback. So say, hey Mark, you know what, that was good. It made some sense to me, and can we keep doing this? All right, thanks very much, guys. I'm going to log out now. I've got to jump on the car and head down to the airport and do some traveling. I'll talk to you all guys very soon. Thanks very much. You have a good one. Bye bye.